The number of AWOL cases in the army has reached a record high. The military is sounding the alarm. They say it's a complete disaster and a verdict on mobilization. Every 2 minutes, someone runs away. Ukrainian defenders say that if this problem isn't solved, the front will rapidly move westward because there simply won't be anyone left to fight. The defenders state that the difficult situation on the battlefield is a consequence of a lack of personnel. Moreover, the quality of the personnel is deteriorating every year. You can find out more about all of this in the following segment. This is the Sunday podcast with Alina Turishin. Subscribe to our channel and give us a like. And now let's get to the main topic. According to the latest data from the Prosecutor General's office, in October, more than 21,000 servicemen left their units on their own. These figures are recorded in criminal proceedings initiated by the State Bureau of Investigation, which cover both AWOL and desertion cases. If the data is accurate, October set a record for the number of escapes from the army in all 4 years of the full-scale war. Serviceman Ihor Lutsenko calls this a very bad record and the main problem in the army. He adds that these are only the official figures, and in reality, many cases of unauthorized absence or desertion go unregistered.
This is the army's number one problem, and therefore it is the country's number one problem. An army that is retreating is still an army capable of winning. An army that is falling apart, that from month to month loses more and more people to desertion and fleeing from their units. That is the real threat to Ukraine's existence. Everything we see on the maps, all these daily advances by the enemy are, among other things, because we lack enough soldiers. We have enough drones at the front, we have enough money in the rear, but we have far too few people fighting. Those who are now at the front are fighting under enormous strain, because for every soldier who hasn't run away, double or even triple the burden falls on their shoulders. Because of this, there are huge gaps in our defenses at the front.
Ihor Lutsenko says that even if the army retreats, that's not as frightening as the fact that there might be no army left and no one left to fight.
And I honestly have no idea what to do about this anymore or who to turn to for help. We need this to be written about on all social networks, shouted about in all the media, so that MPs don't let responsible officials off the hook and voters don't let MPs off the hook either, so that in every square of every city, millions of people would stand holding signs. Even Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, and the currently unnamed rapid Russian advances in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia these days are not as painful as these numbers. The army may retreat, but it will keep fighting. But if there is no army, there will be nothing at all. The terrible, criminal, deadly silence surrounding this issue affects us all. Because of this silence, we are dying and fading away.
The deputy commander of the 3rd Army Corps, Lieutenant Colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Maxim Zhorin, also called such casualty numbers a complete catastrophe. He emphasizes that, given the shortage of people at the front, this issue needs much more attention. We need to stop just putting out fires because they have already grown too large in scale. And finally, to actually study the issue and understand why in some units this number is insignificant, while in others it is counted in the thousands.
Here's a hint. The very first answer lies in the area of working with personnel. Training, provision, attitude towards people, and the professionalism of the commanders themselves. These are things that can absolutely be addressed and, most importantly, are critically necessary. Otherwise, soon the number of non-combat losses will surpass the replenishment figures. Add to this the large-scale mobilization in Russia, where they clearly won't have such problems.
Zhorin also stated that with each passing year, the quality of personnel is getting worse. This depends not only on training, but also on which categories of citizens end up in the military.
I understand that some people are just trying to fulfill quotas this way, but because we're mobilizing the homeless, the elderly, and the sick, no one in the army is any better off. We leave gyms and restaurants in the cities untouched, but instead we send the homeless to the units.
The serviceman emphasizes that we must remember, Ukraine will never be able to compete with Russia in terms of numbers. The only right way is to have a technologically advanced, well-prepared army. However, such slogans are meaningless if the troops are replenished with people who are physically and morally unable to even make it through the training stage. Senior Lieutenant of the Ukrainian Defense Forces with the call sign Alex notes that when it comes to unauthorized abandonment of service, attention should first be paid to 2 key reasons for this phenomenon occurring on such a scale in the military. These are the lack of accountability of commanders for failed decisions in combat situations, as well as the failure of the fundamental principles of mobilization into the defense forces of Ukraine.
As I said before and still say now, even a simplified procedure through the army plus even the possibility to return from unauthorized absence will not eliminate or reduce the rates of this phenomenon. The numerical indicators and the percentage ratio of the number of unauthorized absentees to the total number of specific units can shed light on a large number of problems, so it is worth paying attention to this.
And the fighter known as the Bakhmut demon says that it is necessary to get to the root causes of unauthorized absence. Look at which units have the most cases and figure out why.
Unauthorized absence is a crime. I've always said this, and I will keep saying it. There is the law. But when we talk about unauthorized absence, we forget that certain actions by commanders and officers can also be a crime that precedes this crime. And it's necessary to look into each unit specifically to see what exactly happened and how. On the other hand, are only the military able to do this? And military courts, not civilian ones, should be the ones to judge. Most deputies are just lousy populists and idiots, so it's not worth listening to them at all when it comes to unauthorized absence. I think this problem will be partially solved by the length of service terms and proper transfers.
Junior Sergeant of the 5th Separate Kyiv Assault Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Yuri Sirotyuk, call sign Mame, says that his brigade has never been withdrawn, never rotated, and as an assault unit by default, they never just sit in deep defense. At the same time, the column for unauthorized absence from service in their brigade is mostly filled with zeros. Usually, this is only due to not returning from medical treatment or leave. Isolated cases of unauthorized absence from service are very rare. However, the overall figure for the military is a bit different. According to Mamai, the reason is the widespread tolerance of desertion.
Now it's not even about condemnation anymore. An atmosphere of mass public encouragement is being formed. Encouragement to be a deserter, and since the army is a people's army, it starts to follow the general social trend. An extreme example. A good soldier did not return from leave. He came to us on assignment from the training center and after seeing our rules and the spirit of the team, transferred to us. But now he hasn't come back from leave. The guy is quite young, unmarried. His parents tearfully persuaded him not to return. If earlier society, with its faith, drove the army forward, believing in the impossible, and the army achieved things beyond what was possible, now, in the opinion of a significant and more vocal part of society, the military is at best a place for losers.
The serviceman notes that there are many reasons why people do not want to join the army or are eager to run away. However, the serviceman says, it is obvious that unauthorized abandonment of a military unit during wartime is a crime, and encouraging, tolerating, or justifying such behavior is a direct path to defeat. In Yuri Sirotyuk's opinion, the enemy has already found the keys to implementing its strategy and is acting not only on the battlefield, but above all in the rear. After numerous frontal assaults that exhausted the defense, the enemy switched to a tactic that turned out to be slow, bloody, but unfortunately effective. Infiltration, dispersal, and penetration by small groups, combined with the simultaneous complication of our supply lines, are gradually eroding positions and biting off Ukrainian land. This is not a new method. Similar tactics have been used for centuries by nomadic hordes, avoiding frontal clashes by acting in small detachments, operating in the rear, looting, and killing. In this sense, collaborationism and the tactic of undermining the rear are long-standing elements of the enemy's model. Their tactics are deadly dangerous for infantry, but advantageous for the aggressor's strategic goals. However, an even worse process is the gradual destruction of internal order, faith, unity, and the will to fight within society itself. It is precisely the sowing of despair, chaos, and the loss of faith in victory that diminishes the will to resist. The greatest success of the enemy, according to the military, is precisely the destruction of the mobilization of society in all its forms.
The people who replenish the army are the most vital fresh blood. Without it, the prospects will worsen every day. In this situation, the enemy believes they have charted a path to our strategic defeat. But the success or failure of this path depends solely on us, on our ability not to succumb to entropy, on our faith, will, and struggle. Remember that in wars with Moscow, thousands die, but under occupation, millions will perish. So if you don't want to fight yourself, at least don't encourage cowardice in others.
And military officer Ihor Krivorushko explains the scale of the problem. The total number of military personnel who have ended up in the SZCH category is estimated at around 300,000 people. Even if you consider that not all of them are infantry, this potentially amounts to 3 or 4 full rotations specifically for the infantry. With real incentives for these soldiers to return, the state could stabilize the defensive line. In that case, the Russian tactic of small group infiltrations would lose its effectiveness and the fighting could shift into a stable opposition phase, which, in turn, would create the prerequisites for realistic negotiations. And Oleg Movshan, a serviceman of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, emphasizes that the number of missing personnel in October, namely 20,000 people, is roughly equivalent to 3 or 4 fully manned brigades. He calls this a catastrophe and a verdict on mobilization. We are on the edge of the abyss, or perhaps already falling into it. Without systemic and unpopular changes, the front will move westward much faster, the defender concluded. And what do you think? What are the reasons for the missing personnel and how can this problem be solved? Share your thoughts below this video and stay with TSN to keep up with the most important news. See you in the next episodes.